This is More Than Money with Mapalo Maku, brought to you by Sasfin Wealth.
Welcome to More Than Money. I'm Mapalo Maku, a personal finance columnist, and I love having money conversations that change people's perspective about finances. Why am I doing this podcast, you might ask? To talk about money, not the paper stuff. I mean the baggage, the feeling, the emotional, heart-wrenching stuff. We find this conversation so uncomfortable to have, which is why on this podcast, I have decided to have this very difficult conversations. We are going to have some difficult discussions because better money conversations lead to better money confidence, and healthy money dialogue leads to healthy money decisions. Today, I have the pleasure of sitting next to Murunwa Oni, who is the head of finance at Sasfin Wealth. Murunwa, thank you so much for being here.
No, thank you for having me.
So we are going to be talking about your journey with money. I mean, personal finance or money conversations are quite hard, regardless whether you work in the financial service industry or just a normal person. How have you journeyed with personal finance in your own life? Is it something that is easy to talk about with your family, with your friends, and perhaps even colleagues?
I think I don't find money conversations difficult, per se. For me, my journey started from the age of 10. I went to boarding school.
Yeah.
So before I left, my mom sat me down and she's like, okay, this is your supplies. This is what you're going to take with you. This is your cash. It needs to carry you until month end. We're not going to have a conversation between the month. You sort yourself out.
Oh, wow. From the age of 10.
So I think by the time I got to matric, I had a system. I could actually manage my money very well in terms of making sure that whatever I get for the month, it sustains me until the end of the month.
I can imagine as a 10-year-old, you would have months or some days where perhaps your money ran out. And your mom clearly said, do not come back and forth to me. This is your money and you have to make it stretch and you have to make it work for the rest of the month. Were there ever times when you had to go back to her, and what was the response?
So obviously when I started going to boarding school and then on the weekends they're like, oh, you can go to the shops.
Yeah.
You get excited. You have money. You're a kid. You go to the shops and you get there, you buy everything. And then a few weeks down the line, you need a toiletry. So it was like, okay, if I have to go home now, this conversation won't go well.
Yeah.
So eventually you kind of like buddy up with your friends. And then you kind of like support each other in terms of if one of us runs out of money and they need toiletry, hey, I have extras, I can sort you out. So you kind of like have a partnership that works. But what I started doing and something that I grew up with, I started segmenting my money. So whenever I have money, I allocate it to functions.
Yeah.
So when I have money, I know that, okay, this is for groceries, this is for school fees, and I don't touch it. So you can come to me and say, I need help. But if my excess cash is done, I don't touch those because they're already allocated to stuff. So I had to do that as a kid growing up because otherwise I was always going to run out of cash.
That is incredible. I mean, at that age, you were already budgeting, isn't it? Because now you're saying, okay, I had allocated my money towards this, the different categories. Did you know that it was called budgeting?
Not really. You just needed to make sure you have enough money to survive. It was just that. Yeah. But I think it made me very independent and it made things easy for me.
Yes. And what were the conversations with your mom or your parents around money?
So I think from a family point of view, we never really had like a sit-down conversation and talk about the family finance per se.
Yeah.
But with my mom, you always had the conversation, especially like, learn to manage your money. And I think one of the things that she used to do, you'll go home and be like, Ma, can I please have those sneakers? And she'd be like, maybe you need to wait a month or two and then we'll talk about it. And after a while, I realized that was more to teach you the patience than to say, I don't have money. It was more the reminder of there are times where you can't just get what you want. There are times where you have to wait and, budget for it. And then when you eventually get it, there's that excitement that this is mine and I actually waited for it. And
I was patient.
Got it. Mm-hmm.
And I mean, that is so significant, especially in the environment that we live in, that instant gratification. I want something today. I think about it. Oh my goodness, I'm going to perhaps use my credit card. I'm not going to wait. Do you think that has helped you throughout your financial journey, or you have had some impulsive purchases yourself?
I think I do have moments of letting myself indulge.
Yeah.
But what I know is that I don't do it often. Like, I think at this point in my life, I'm so busy work wise, the kids. Like, weekends, you're literally busy being sport tournaments, soccer, dance, you're busy.
Yes.
So, on those days where I feel like, oh, I have a moment, then I do let myself indulge. But because I don't do it all the time, then it's okay. And I think, like I say, I'm a very disciplined person to a certain extent that I'm not going to touch what has been allocated to certain functions. So I'm going to indulge from that post that I know that,
Portion.
okay, this is my free spend. Yeah.
I mean, oftentimes when we hear about personal finance, it always seems so restrictive. You cannot enjoy yourself. Why is it important to put or allocate some money to indulge a little bit?
We work so hard, guys. So we need that moment of just breathe and be.
Yeah.
And I think that is important.
What is the biggest splurge you've ever had so far?
I do think I have a few,
Yes.
but they're not that bad. It's probably like a handbag where I look at the price and I look at it twice and I'm like, okay, I'm taking you. You know,
Yeah.
you have that moment of looking at it like, am I paying this much for a handbag? And then after a while, you're like, no, I don't do this every day. It's fine. Let's go. Yeah.
Yes. Where do you think the discipline came from? I mean, obviously, with having gone to boarding school, it taught you to be independent at a very young age. But there are people who've gone to boarding school and their reaction is, you know what, I had to make every little rand stretch. So now that I earn well, I'm going to blow it.
You know what? I think growing up, there are moments where you'd look at somebody they're serial borrowers. Like there were people who would borrow money to go to work. They need
Yeah.
petrol money. There are people who would borrow money for food. And I'm one of those people who told myself that no, I don't want to find myself in a place where I'm borrowing for such things.
Yeah.
And the truth of the matter is, I am aware that life happens. People do find themselves in situations, right? I fully understand that. But there are certain people that this is an action that is, it's a cycle. Every month on month, they go through the cycle. So I think growing up and watching people do that, I was like, I don't ever want to find myself there.
And you know what they call that? It's a vow that you make with yourself by observing a certain behavior, especially when growing up, and saying, you know what, I will never be that. Or when I become older, I will never do this with my money, or I will do this with my money. Do you think that also shaped you? I mean, you saw people, not having money to go to work, and, that was a vow for you.
It was. And I
Yeah.
think, like, when I look at the difference between myself and my husband, I think when it comes to money, I'm very cautious. Like, he always look at me like, okay, you're very disciplined. And I'm like, yes, but it's because the independent streak that's in me. I don't want to find myself having to ask somebody for something, right? So if I can provide for myself, I rather make sure I can.
So now you've brought in the topic of family and finances, right? So let's say you are the disciplined one. How do you manage? Because obviously, the person that you're going to get married to is not exactly like you, right? And that's the beauty in relationships that, where you are weak, they are strong, and where they are strong, that sort of thing. But how do you have money conversations when you manage money differently?
Exactly what you said. Where I am weak, my
Yes.
husband is actually very strong. So he actually balanced me out,
Mm.
right? So if I just give you a bit of background between me and my husband, we met as students. We were studying together, so we had the varsity around the same time. We kind of like grew together, started working, eventually got married. But because we've been together for so long, when we got married, there was never, this is our income, this is how we're going to spend it.
Yes.
There was never that because we've been together, we've been doing this,
Yeah.
so there was no need for that conversation. And I think we managed somehow. When it was just the two of us, it was fine. It worked. We kind of like got into our own roles. So one will pay the bond and one will pay the levy and one will pay the medical aid and one will do the groceries. And it worked.
Yes.
For a while, it worked. And then firstborn came through. And now it became a bit tricky because as babies come, it's very easy for the mother to take care of their day to day because you are there with them. You're the one who actually starts seeing the need first. So you are the one buying the nappies, buying the milk, getting the helper, those kind of stuff. So because we never used to have this, conversation, it was easy for me to just say, okay, I had the helper. The cost for the helper comes through from me. I'm buying this thing. So eventually it got to a point where I was like, I don't think I'm coping. And that's when we actually got to that, okay, let's sit down. What's our income? How are we spending it? What do we need to move around? But for a while, we were just winging it and we were okay to a certain extent.
Yes.
Right? And when we sat down and we go through, we move things around. Like there was no discomfort to it.
Yes.
Like we literally just sat down and said, this is what we have. This is what we need to cover. This is how we're going to cover it. And make sure that everybody can still breathe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think it also kind of speaks to your own independence that, I want to get things done and I will do it this way and I can do this? Especially for a lot of women, we have quite a lot of, I'm independent, I can do this. And sometimes you forget that actually I do have a partner here who can help.
That is very true. Like you keep rolling with it, and sometimes you don't even ask him or talk to him about it. You just do it because it's there. It needs to be done. So you sort it out. But after a while, you realize that, but why am I carrying all this by myself? I'm not alone. I shouldn't have to carry this by myself. And I think like with my husband, when we had that conversation, like literally he stepped in on some, okay, I'll sort this out. You can sort that out and we're good.
Yeah. And, I just want to go back to your career. I mean, you work in the financial service industry. How has that played, in your role, especially as a woman, in terms of asking for help at work?
So at work, I ask for help. I do. I do think that it was a discipline that I needed to grow. But I am one of those people that say, we are in this together. So we shouldn't have one person in the team that is sleeping at 12 when everybody knocked off at 5. We need to share the love. If we're going to sit, no. We need to all be there. So even if we are chatting on Teams at 12, but we're all together, when you're doing that as a team, it doesn't feel like a struggle than when you're sitting and you know that the rest of your team are probably slipping away in their comfort and you are busy working. If you're all there as a team and we're busy chatting and we're busy working, there is a team effort and a team achievement after that we did it. This is us. So for me, at work and especially with my team, we are in this together. I'm not one of those person to hog everything and try and do everything myself. I think probably when I did start in my career, I tried doing that, but I realized that eventually you just putting yourself under pressure and it's not necessary. Yes, you have people that actually can spread the load. And the moment you spread it, it helps because then you don't feel that kind of pressure. Everybody's carrying on a small task, but together we actually can bring this thing together.
Yes. Tell me about your early career. Were there mistakes made? And how did you get over those mistakes?
There were mistakes made, hey? But I think for me, it's the learnings from them more than just the mistakes. But the biggest learning for me was how the manager at the time handled it, right? It was more, there was never a personal attack. There was never, you did this, you didn't do this.
You are a failure.
There was never that. The scrutiny was, okay, this is the process that we have. Is our process working? Do we need controls in our process to make sure it works? And I think for me, that was very much an inspiring moment to say that that's the leader I want to be. I don't want, and because for me, I knew that even tomorrow, if there's another mistake, I am willing to go stand in front of this person and say, this is not working. Maybe, like the conversation didn't make me feel like I need to run to the bathroom. I'm uncomfortable. For me, it was that we are all learning. And even right now where I am, as much as I have all this experience over the years, I'm comfortable when something does not make sense to say, guys, okay, go back, roll back a bit, walk me through that slowly. Let me understand what's happening. Because I realize that it's all work in progress for all of us. So it's okay when you don't understand something. It's okay if you get something wrong. It's just how you deal with it when you do get something wrong. And it's not because you're getting it wrong because you are just being negligent.
And I think it speaks to the ethos then of your own company that don't attack the person. look at the processes. Where did we go wrong? Because if this person is failing, and I mean that in inverted commas, then clearly there's something that we are not really up to par with as a team.
Exactly. And if you remember, we can replace the person tomorrow, but if the
Yes.
process is not working, even the next person is going to have an issue. There is still going to be a problem.
Yes, that is so true.
So
I think for what I'm getting is that having witnessed that, you looked at that scenario and you said, I want to be that type of a leader myself. I mean, you are head of finance at Sasfin Wealth. Has that shaped your approach also as a leader?
definitely. I don't think I've ever been at a point where people see me as unapproachable.
Yes.
Right? Or as, we're going to address big issues with you. And if we think it's a small issue, we'll talk. I think I'm open to any issue. I'm open to any conversation. And that's how I am with my team. To say that everything is open for discussion.
Yes,
If you're uncomfortable with something, if you question on something, let's chat.
You are listening to More Than Money, a podcast collaboration brought to you by Sasfin Wealth. At Sasfin Wealth, we empower our clients to reach their global investment goals, to retire with dignity, and to leave a lasting legacy. If you would like to have real money conversations, visit sasfin.com/wealth and talk to us. Enjoy the rest of the podcast.
Maybe you can even just take us back to who have been your mentors on this journey.
I've been fortunate to have some very good leaders that I've worked with. I do think that they've always been open in terms of giving me feedback. In terms, and it has been feedback in a way that it's never came through in a hard way. It came through in some, you know what, she is right. I can actually improve on this. And I've had some ladies that were not very good as well, or not the best in terms of communication, not the best in terms of addressing issues. So it has been learning from both sides.
Yes.
And the relationship that I've built, like I have people that I've worked with like 5-10 years back that we still have the communication, we still have the relationship, and this person was my manager 10 years back. And that talks to the kind of, the development and the appreciation that I have in terms of how they've led me. And I've had leaders that they've identified what I'm good at and they allowed me to do it. And I think that has always been very important to me, that people will say, okay, this is your space. Yes, I'm your boss. This is your space. You run with your space. But the moment there's anything, I'm there to guide you. So I've had those kind of people. And I think that's the reason why I am today.
Yeah.
The way I am and where I am today. And I think one thing that I learned over the years was to reflect and to be honest with myself. It's very easy to always, when things go wrong, to always say, but they did this.
Yes.
That's why I reacted the way I did.
Yes.
Right? So I think throughout the years, I've developed the habit of actually being honest with myself when I reflect, to say that, you know what, maybe if you've just taken a moment and say, let's discuss this later, the conversation could have been very different.
Yeah.
Right? So there is those moments where I'm very much honest with myself. And I have a husband who is the most honest person I know. I always tell people that my husband is my cheerleader.
Yes.
And also my critic. So when I have moments when I doubt myself, I go to him and I tell him that, you know what, this is what I did, and I'm uncomfortable. There's a part of it that feels like maybe I could have done this differently.
Yeah.
And over the years, even if it might hurt, he will give me his honest view of what he thinks or how things could have gone. And like I said, there are a lot of moments when you say things and I'm like, maybe you shouldn't have said that.
You shouldn't have said that. But I mean, you were the one asking for feedback.
Yes, maybe you shouldn't have said that. But he is one of the most honest people when you ask for feedback. He will give you the exact feedback to say, yeah, maybe you were in the wrong, that you shouldn't have done that.
Yes.
Right? And I've learned to take ownership of that. You get to a point where you feel like, okay, I'm not in a good space. Let's schedule the meeting for tomorrow.
Yes.
Let me think about it. And then tomorrow, when it's not emotional and now we're actually looking at the facts of, okay, what are we addressing?
Yes.
Then let's have the meeting.
I love the fact that, You know that it is uncomfortable to ask for feedback because it can either be positive or negative, but you are willing to put yourself in the hot seat, if you can call it that I am willing to receive feedback. And I think that's one of the things that really make us grow as human beings. If you have people around you who just say, yes, 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 all you are doing is perfect, then that's not it. That's
No,
not
you
it.
know they're not giving you honest feedback.
That is true.
You know.
Yeah.
Yes. And I think self-awareness is important. I think if you want to be a leader in any position, you need to have that self-awareness of knowing that, okay, this is how I normally go when situations are like this. And maybe I need a moment or two to say, okay, let's think this through.
Yes.
And you need to honestly reflect on how you actually react to certain situations. I remember previously I worked for a place where they would ask, what actually makes you see red? Like, what are those things that when people
Yeah,
do,
yes.
it actually makes you see red? And we did that as a leadership to say that we know each other. I'm acknowledging that when you do this,
you are seeing red and
Yes.
perhaps it's not a good time to have this conversation.
Exactly.
How important is it to create an environment where people can be truly honest when you are doing some sort of teamwork?
I think it's extremely, extremely important. And I think not just in contribution as well. You want people to be able to contribute openly,
Yes.
freely, and not have to feel like, okay, we kind of like need to align our ideas to hers so that, because that's how you actually get value from having different people in a setup. Because there's no point of us being different and we come here and all trying to be aligned and we all try to be the same thing. Yeah? So I think that is extremely important.
Yeah.
You need people who are honest and who say their views, and that's where we get value as a team.
Let's go back to family and money. You have 2 kids.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think you're teaching them about money?
So you remember when I said I think I'm very cautious about money in
Yes.
terms of how I spend it? I remember the other day I was with my son and we were talking about going to buy something. I'm trying to remember what. So when we get there, I'm like, okay, go ahead and buy it.
Yes.
And he's like, but aren't you coming? I'm like, no, you're buying it with your money. It's yours, right?
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, if you're buying it with my money, I'm not buying it anymore. I don't need it.
All of a sudden, he doesn't need it.
Yes. And my son is that, right? He would, if we are
How old is
talking,
he?
he is 15.
15.
Yeah? If we're
Okay.
talking spending on mommy's card, it's okay. We're spending. But let's talk about purchasing on his card.
Then it's a no-no.
No. The other day, I think there was a Nando's delivery guy and we needed to pay cash. So he
Yeah.
couldn't find my card. So he went and paid with his card. Oh my word.
You did not hear the end of it.
My money. My money. So I think from a saving point of view, both him and the younger sister,
Yeah.
they're very good. Like my daughter will always tell me, there was a time that I won a bet with her
Yeah.
and I didn't really want the money. And then she's like, oh, you guys underestimate me. You have no idea how much money I have.
Oh, wow. Oh, wow.
So I was like, okay. But they are both big savers.
Yes.
They're both like that. And I think the one thing that I truly, truly want to teach them about money, and I hope that somehow in my head, I think we're already there. It's one, they must never choose their careers based on money. That's not why you choose a career. And so far, in terms of the career aspirations that they have, it's all based on the passions.
Yes.
Their passion in terms of what they would like to do. So
Why is it dangerous for someone to choose their career based on money?
because there will become a day when money does not motivate you anymore. Then what happens?
Yeah. Do you feel like that about your career?
Not at all. I enjoy what I do. So I knew I was going to do accounting when I was in high school.
Oh, wow.
I love what I do. I enjoy it. And I think I enjoy it because I don't see numbers as numbers. I see numbers as a story.
Yes.
So I actually enjoy what I do. So it's not about the fact that I'm going to earn X. No, that's not what drives me.
And how actually do you go about teaching kids about money? Obviously, in an age-appropriate way.
So with my son growing up, boys are they lose things very easily,
Yeah.
right? So you buy lunch boxes and you keep buying lunch boxes. And after a while, you're like, no, man,
This is the
this
6
is
to
not
1
working.
in one term.
Yes. Then this person come home without a tracksuit. Where's your tracksuit? I don't know. Oh, shoes.
Yes.
School shoes. Like, how did you get to the car without school shoes? What happened? Right? And I think for me, that the appreciation started to be, okay, you have a bank card that has money. If you lose this, you're going to buy it. I'm not buying it. So it started there. So with my son, it
Yes.
started there.
So you have to be responsible for your own things, or you're going
Yes,
to
you
pay
must
for them.
understand the value that this thing
Yes.
has a value, because if I just keep replacing it, you're not aware that you're actually losing something that is worth something.
Yeah.
And during winter, when somebody comes home without a tracksuit top and now they're going to freeze to school the following day, you have to buy them. You don't have a choice.
Yes.
So now we're looking at each other and saying, it's fine. I've done my job. I've
You
bought
did have one.
Yes. Now,
You go and purchase with your own money.
exactly. So it's those kind of small stuff. So with my son growing up, that's where we started to say,
Yes.
okay, this is where. But my daughter she's very prim and proper. She's a little lady and she got her stuff in order. And most of the time, she's actually the one sorting her brother out in terms of making sure that he has his stuff in order. So I think with my daughter is a bit more different, because she's the one who will be looking at you like, no, but mommy, you shouldn't do that. You should be doing this.
Yes.
So the conversation is a bit more different. But as much as she's that, she loves things. She likes, let there be a new brand or a new cap. She's that kind of person.
Yes.
So, mommy, can we please buy this? Can we please buy this? She is that person.
Oh, wow. And how do you manage your own money? Because obviously, we often think that if you work in the financial service industry, of course you have all your ducks in a row. Has there ever been a time where you were not so great with your own money?
Definitely a few times. But the one time that I can actually, that kind of like pops up for me, was when I bought my second car.
Yes.
Right? So my first car was a proper starter pack.
Yeah.
It was small, it was fuel efficient, it was prim and proper. And then my son was born and I decided that I need a bigger car. Because when you travel with babies, you need to carry the pram, the
this
cot
and
bed,
that.
So I decided, you know what, I need a bit more space, especially when you're traveling, because we need to carry the whole house with us. Cool. Then I went and I bought this beautiful SUV. And the fuel consumption on that car was ridiculous. I was driving a small car.
Yes. Going from that
Fuel
efficient-
consumption didn't exist in my world.
Yes.
And every time when I poured a full tank, I would look at myself like, I'm paying this much to drive. I was staying in Douglasdale then. To drive from Douglasdale to Sandton. Like, it didn't make sense.
Yes.
I kept it for a while, but I think eventually the accountant in me won.
Yes.
And I
Like,
got a
this is
smaller
not reasonable.
SUV.
Yeah.
No, I got a smaller SUV, which was way more, the fuel economy, like it made sense. But yeah, that for me was like, it was a shock to the system. Because I think when you buy a new car like that, fuel economy was not even a question. I didn't even ask those kind of questions.
Yes.
It was more, this is a beautiful car. It
And
has
this
the
will be
space,
the monthly
it
installment,
will
whatever
work.
the case.
Exactly.
Yeah, but we never think about, the cost of ownership when it comes to some of the things that we want.
No, definitely. No, that was a shock to the system for me.
What are some of your fears about money?
Like I told you earlier on, I like being able to provide for myself. And as a mom, I like being in a position to be able to provide for my kids and to be able to look after my mother if there is a need for that. And I think the biggest fear for me is to find myself in a position where I can't do that. I think the way I'm so independent, it's hard for me to ask. I'm not used to it. And that's the point that I work so hard to make sure that I don't have to ask anybody. So I think that's not being able to be in a position where I can actually provide for myself and my kids.
And for your kids. Yeah. What do you still hope for yourself? Anyone who'd look at you and say, oh my goodness, you are head of finance. Surely you still have your own aspirations. What do you still hope for?
Lots of them.
Yeah.
I have lots of aspiration. And I actually have a very different view to what you just said right now. I feel like I'm a kid that just walked into the space and realized, oh my word, there is just so much to learn.
Yeah.
There's just so much to do. There is so much to grow into. That's where I am. And I always tell people that I love when I go to a board meeting and I feel like I'm the youngest person in the room and I'm the least experienced person in the room. Because for me, that means this is a learning opportunity.
Yes.
This is my opportunity to be a sponge and actually absorb. So I have a long way to go.
Yeah. I love how, even as I'm asking you the question, like your face completely lit up with, no, this is just the beginning. And the fact that you're saying, I'm curious. I know that I don't know everything. I am a sponge. I want to learn as much as possible. And I think sometimes we lose sight of that. Once you get to a certain level, you think, oh goodness, I just have to maintain this. But you are still very curious.
I am, and I realize I think I'm open to see that, you know what, I might understand this environment, but I fully don't understand it.
Yes.
I want to go into the nitty-gritties to understand how this gets to where I am. So I think there's a long way to go.
Yeah. As a last question, for someone who wants to get in this industry and do what you do, what advice would you give to them?
That's quite interesting. I'm actually even trying to think of how I got into this industry.
Was it by design? Was it by luck?
So actually, when I went to university, I remember I wanted to do a BCom in investment.
Yes.
And my brother said to me, no, man, that's going to limit you, right? At least do a BCom in accounting. Then you can choose whichever one you want to kind of like end up in.
Yes.
But don't put yourself in a box and say, this is where I want to be. So spread yourself and then you can choose at the end of the day. And I did that. And I enjoy what I do. I enjoy the investment space. I enjoy the wealth space. Right? And I think that's the first thing. Like I said, the biggest lesson I want from my kids is they must follow their passion. So if you want to be in the space, you must be passionate about the space. Learn about the space. And I think there's a lot of ways to learn about the space.
Yeah.
I know you were just saying that you had a conversation with Mohammed just now.
Yes.
And if you actually hear his passion in terms of the space that is in, then you realize that, you know, the moment somebody kind of like gets into space and say, oh, this is my space, there's that drive, there's that energy.
There's a fire. There's a different type of energy altogether.
So for me, if you look at me and say, I want to be in the space, you can't tell me if you don't know anything about the space because there's so much opportunity for you to actually get to understand our space. There's so much opportunity for you to get to experience our space. And it's not even like, you know, you need to come visit our office to be able to interact with our space. No, just go online.
Yeah.
So if you want to be in the space, start there.
Yeah.
Get yourself in the space. Embrace the space. Learn the space.
And be curious like
Exactly.
you. Thank you so much, Murunwa.
Thank you.
This was a Sasfin Wealth podcast. Visit sasfin.com/wealth for more information.